Assalamu alaikum class. So in this chapter, we'll be talking about energy resources. Now, even though this chapter is of power, but you'll see that most of the questions are based on energy resources. And that's due to the fact that power basically means the energy which is transmitted per unit time. Okay, so first thing that you need to understand is the difference between a renewable energy resource and a non-renewable energy resource. So if you will break this word into parts, then you'll see that non-renewable means that something that cannot be renewed, something that cannot be made again. So think of fossil fuels. Now fossil fuels take millions of years to form. So once we use a lot of fossil fuels, then obviously we are not going to make them again within a smaller period of time. Rather, we will take millions of years to form, right? So it is going to take millions of years to form. So this is categorized as a non-renewable energy resource. Now, think about a renewable energy resource. So for example, if you think about a solar energy, so solar energy is going to be a renewable energy resource because sun is so solar energy is basically retrieved from sun. So sun is something that is available over here, right? And it has been available for quite a long time and we expect it to be there, right? So we will keep on getting the energy from the sun and we will not be worried about it being running out, right? So we are going to categorize solar energy as a renewable energy resource. Okay, now that was a small recap of how to differentiate between a renewable energy resource and a non-renewable energy resource. Okay, now I hope that you have watched this video. Once you have watched this video, you'll be able to answer these questions. Now, first, we'll be talking about the description of each of this type of energy resources. So, part one is solar energy. So, solar energy is basically the energy which is basically taken from the sun, right? So, power means energy from the sun. That is, the energy from the sunlight is then converted into electrical energy. The sun basically produces two kinds of energies. Heat energy and light energy. So both these energies are used and transformed into electrical energy. Now think about wind. So wind is basically the movement energy, right? So because of the wind blades can move, right? And that movement can further turn on the turbines and those turbines can turn on the generator which will then produce electricity. Now think about hydroelectric. So hydro means water. So the energy which is basically produced using water is called hydroelectricity. Now think about tidal. So tidal energy is basically produced by natural rise and fall of ocean tides and currents, which the energy obtained is then that ocean tides, the movement which is produced due to the ocean tide is then converted into the electricity. Think about nuclear energy. So nuclear energy is basically the energy which is released from the atoms. So think of carbon, hydrogen. So carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, all of these things, they're basically atoms, right? So these atoms have a lot of energy. So that energy is basically used to generate nuclear electricity or nuclear energy. Nuclear energy, and then that nuclear energy can be used to produce electricity. Think of geothermal. So geo means earth and thermal means heat. So the heat energy which is stored in the earth is basically called geothermal energy. So for example, if I pump some water into deep down into the earth, then that water will heat up using the energy which is stored in the earth. Okay, now let's discuss the advantages. Okay, so the advantage of a solar energy is that number one, think of the advantages. You can think of the advantages yourself. For example, sun is something which is freely available, right? So the energy that you're going to get from the sun is freely available, so you can easily use it. Number two, that it is a renewable source of energy, right? Secondly, wind power is basically again a renewable energy resource, right? And it is also freely available. Think about the hydroelectricity. So hydroelectricity is again a renewable energy resource. And why am I saying that is renewable? Because number one, we have plentiful of water and that can easily be replenished by rain. And then think about tidal energy. So tidal energy, the advantage is that number one, tidal energy is a renewable energy resource. And the advantages of all these four, and this one also, is that they basically do not produce a lot of pollutants in the air, right? So they keep the environment safe. Think about nuclear energy. Now, the only advantage of the nuclear energy that we can now I can mention over here is the fact that nuclear energy produces a lot of energy, right? So only few atoms together can produce a lot of energy, but this nuclear energy is non-renewable. So this is going to come in its disadvantage. And number two, that the waste this nuclear energy produces can be very detrimental to human health, and that can the waste produced can have its effect for around years and hours, and usually for years basically. Now think about geothermal energy. So the advantage is that geothermal energy is basically renewable energy resource, and number two, of course, it does not harm the environment, right? Now the disadvantage of this is that geothermal energy is not available everywhere, right? So there are only few places where you can from where you can extract the geothermal energy, right? Now think about the disadvantages of the tidal energy. So the disadvantage for example, the tidal and the hydroelectric power is that for both of them, the construction cost is really high. For example, for building the dams and for building the reservoirs and for building the other equipments to generate electricity, the construction cost is really high. Think about wind power. So for wind power, we know that every day is not a windy day, right? So because of that, you cannot extract most of the energy from the wind. And number two, you need large areas which are open. So you need open grounds to extract the energy from the wind. So that's the disadvantage. And for solar energy, the disadvantage is that how much solar energy we can get depends upon depends upon the season, right? For example, in summers you'll be able to extract more solar energy. In winters we'll be able to get less solar energy. Just like that, during night we cannot get the solar energy, but during days we can. That's the disadvantage. Now coming to the crossword. Now for crossword, so part one, so let's go to part one for down. So from north to south, if we want to fill up the boxes, we use this oil to produce energy. Okay, now over here we are going to write fossils, Fossil, right? So we are going to write fossil. Now the thing is that now you need to look for the word that will be able to fill up all the boxes, right? So if we think of part C, I'm going to fill this up with you. So over here we are going to write FO So just because we want to fill the boxes, so we are going to write fossils. Okay, now so one is done. For part two, it says the energy that comes from the sun. So energy that comes from the sun is called solar. Okay, now over here in this box, we could have written crude oil or gasoline as well. But since this is something that will match the other boxes, that's why I've written fossils over here, right? Now think about, so two is done. Think about third box. So third box says the energy that comes from the heat of the earth. So we just discussed it. This is geo. So we are going to call it geothermal. Okay, I hope it works. Okay. Now, for the other one, for fifth, it says we put them on the roof to take energy from the sun. Okay, I'm going to do it later on. For that, I first need to do part six. So part six is the energy coming from water. So the energy that comes from water is hydro, right? Hydroelectric power. So hydroelect. Okay, so this is elect, then trick. Hydroelectric. Okay. Now you know that whatever word is going to come over here should have R, right? So over here we are going to look for the word 7. Word 7 says power plant must have these to avoid pollution. So power plant must have filter, right? Okay. So okay. Now 7 is also done. 5 is we put them on the roof to take energy from the sun. So where is fifth? So now you know that in the fifth one, H is going to come, right? So over here we're going to write, okay, now usually what we put on the roof is basically called a solar panel. Now the solar panel has basically solar cells, and then that has integrated in themselves some photovoltaic cells, right? So that's what we are going to write over here. Do search for the word photovoltaic. So I've written it over here as well for your help, right? And then and of course, just to fill this word, I'm going to write S over here. Okay. Now fifth is done. Think about fourth. So the energy from the animals and plants, and that is basically called biomass, right? So it is going to come over here. Fourth, biomass. Okay. Now 6.1 says that energy coming from water, we have already done it. 9.1 says the energy that the turbines produce. I'm going to come to this because there's some problem over here. 8.1 is the more it shines, the more energy it produces. So look for where it is. Okay, where is it? So 8 is this, right? We know that only two words can come. So the only option we're left with is sun. And that of course suits over here as well. Then coming to the point 10, it says wind. The more the wind blows, the more energy they produce. So basically over here, we can think of a lot. We can think of generators as a possible option. We can think of windmills as a possible option. But you see that it needs to have a T. So we are going to say turbines. So, we can have more than one word, but we need to look for the word that suits the word cross, the crossword. Okay, so turbines. Okay, now the issue is it says the energy that the turbines produce. Remember, class, turbines basically take in the kinetic energy and convert it into mechanical energy. So over here, technically, the word mechanical should come, right? So because of this, you may leave this, right? Just to fill the word, we cannot just admit something wrong. So we know that the energy that is produced from the turbine is called mechanical energy, and the word mechanical cannot fix in over here. So we are going to leave this. Do leave this. Okay, now I'm going to clear this. Clear all. Okay. Now coming on to the other points. Does Pakistan face an energy crisis? So the thing is, they're asking you whether we are in energy crisis right now or not. So yes, we are in energy crisis, and that is affecting all the sectors. For example, think about the economy. A lot of our industries, a lot of, for example, even if you think about ourselves, a lot of our studies right now basically depends upon electricity, right? Because we are on an online system for remote learning, right? So a lot of sectors right now are depending upon electricity, and electricity is a power that basically comes from energy, right? So when these sectors are not going to work efficiently, then of course this is going to cause unemployment and inflation, right? So do you understand that we are in energy crisis right now because we do not have enough energy, right? We right now as we right now basically depend upon we depend upon fossil fuels as a source of energy. We haven't shifted to sustainable energy resources, to renewable energy resources like solar energy, water energy, right? So most of us are still depending upon fossil fuels, and that's why we have less energy reserves. Now, why do you think we have such sort of problems? So why do you think we are in an energy crisis right now? So Pakistan is facing these problems because of poor management of energy, right? Okay, so the first problem is that we are wasting energy, right? We turn on the lights and we keep them turned on even if you're not using it, right? So that's something that we're wasting. So please be very careful about it. You as individuals can turn off the lights, can turn off the fans, can unplug when something is not used, right? Can close the fridge door, use water wisely, get rid of phantoms, right? And enjoy a no cook meal. So we can do a lot, right, as individuals. And then so basically the sector needs a lot of and secondly, one is that is wasting. Number two is we depend upon fossil fuels. Now there's a need that we shift to renewable or sustainable energy. So we shift to renewable energy resources. Now this renewable energy resources basically demand a lot of capital, a lot of investment, right? Now, the problem is that due to political instability, due to terrorism, due to lack of security, a lot of people do not invest in Pakistan, right? And our governments, of course, do not get enough time to focus on bringing renewable energy resources to Pakistan. So, for example, due to terrorism, a lot of money has been, spent on terrorism, and a lot of money has been spent on security. But so that is why we are left with less energy to be spent upon the renewable energy resources. For example, for building up more dams, for building up solar panels and solar furnaces, in order to shift to solar energy. Now, suggest some more ways to save energy. So these are some of the ways to which you can save energy as individuals. Now, collect the information about some of the countries of the world who are taking sustainable uses of energy as a serious matter and is participating in saving the energy. So, Australia, Canada, Denmark, New Zealand, Finland, they are the countries which are right now taking this sustainable uses of energy as a serious matter, and they really want to shift to renewable energy resources, right? So, because they believe that the type of energy resources that we're using right now, they do understand that this is having an effect on the environment. For example, if we use a lot of fossil fuels, then we know that it is causing harmful effects on the environment. For example, it is causing global warming, it is producing toxic gases, which is resulting in a lot of pollution in the air, and that pollution can then further lead to acid rain. So you need to go through this answer to understand that they believe that because if they'll use less fossil fuels, then there'll be less amount of toxic fumes released by power plants, and then they're going to conserve the Earth's natural resources and protect the ecosystem from destruction, right? So these are some of the countries which are basically taking it seriously. Now, I have been talking about sustainable energy resources, and I hope if you have watched video lectures a lot many times, you must know that sustainable energy is basically practice of using energy in a way that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future to meet their needs. Now, if somebody asks you that why is fossil fuel not a sustainable source of energy, so you're going to say that fossil fuels take millions of years to form, right? So if you're going to use all the energy, all the fossil fuels, then of course yes, right now you can give that energy resource and give that energy to the people, but you're using up all the energy and there'll be no energy left for the future generations, right? And point number two is that because this energy is something which is not good for the environment, right? So you when you keep on using fossil fuels, you're basically destroying the environment as well. Okay, so that's it. I hope you understand